is
again like
this?
100
FBI, we're
others.
taking over.
Quiet
Like hell you are! This is my
searchlights
scene!
Not
glowing,
anymore.
and
Stand
the
down.
neighborhood winding down, until a shrieking siren sliced the stillness apart. Red and blue strobes flashed violently across houses as a police cruiser swooped in behind a black sedan, tires skidding, engine growling like a trapped animal. What happened next would not only shatter reputations, it would expose everything wrong with a broken system. Inside that sedan sat Danielle Carter, a composed black woman in her mid-30s, returning home from a long shift. Her car rolled to a safe stop, hands firmly placed on the wheel, calm but alert. She had seen stories like this too many times. But she had also trained for them, more than any ordinary driver ever could. The cruiser's door slammed open as Officer Blake Bolton stepped out, radiating hostility before he spoke a single word. His uniform was crisp, badge gleaming, attitude stretched to arrogance. Bolton lived by a twisted theory: guilt first, facts never. Tonight, he believed he'd spotted an easy target. License and registration. He barked, not even bothering with greeting or explanation. Danielle blinked, swallowed her frustration, and reached slowly for her purse. "Officer," she said evenly, "may I ask why I'm being pulled over?" Bolton smirked. A cruel, sloppy grin. Suspicious vehicle matching a carjacking. Step out of the car. Suspicious. Danielle's plates were clean, her record spotless, her driving perfect. And yet, Bolton's tone carried certainty, as if her skin tone was evidence enough. Neighbors peeked out windows. A few teenagers started recording. The whole street felt the tension thicken, like a fuse burning toward an explosion. Bolton ripped her door open before she even unbuckled her belt, yanking her out like he was hauling contraband. Her purse tumbled, groceries spilled, a carton of milk burst open and streamed down the curb like spilled innocence. Cuffs clicked around her wrists before she could finish her sentence. "You're under investigation," Bolton snapped. "For what?" Danielle demanded. He didn't answer. Because there was no reason. No stolen car. No alert. Just a cop drunk on power, ready to turn a routine drive into a nightmare. But Bolton had no idea who he was messing with. Even with cold steel biting her wrists, Danielle inhaled deeply, not in fear, but in calculation. She'd waited her whole career for a moment like this. When she finally lifted her chin, her eyes locked with his. "Officer," she said clearly, "you need to check my identification." Now, he scoffed, oblivious that his life was about to turn upside down. And the cameras kept rolling. Bolton rolled his eyes dramatically, as if Danielle's request offended him more than any crime could. "Lady, you're in no position to ask for anything," he sneered. But Danielle didn't flinch. She stared him down with the quiet confidence of someone carrying more authority than every badge on his uniform combined. Bolton crouched to snatch up her purse from the asphalt. The recording phones zoomed in. Milk pooled at his feet. Fruit rolled into the street gutter. He ripped the bag open, spilling its contents across his patrol car hood: a wallet, receipts, keys, and a few work folders. In Bolton's mind, this was the moment he found something. Something illegal. Something he could use to justify every reckless decision he'd made. Instead, he found the one thing that would end his career. Her wallet hit the metal with a thud, flipping open. And there it was. A dark blue credential case, pristine, embossed in gold. Not a driver's license. Not a library card. Not anything he ever expected a black woman he targeted to carry. Bolton froze. Cameras caught it from every angle, his eyes widening, his jaw going slack, all. The color draining from his face like a bathtub leak. He lifted the badge slowly, almost afraid it would burn him. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Danielle Carter. For the first time in the entire encounter, silence swallowed the scene. Even the siren seemed to choke on its own sound before it cut abruptly. Danielle's voice broke through the air like a hammer hitting concrete. "Officer Bolton, you have just detained a federal agent without legal cause." The neighbors gasped. One whispered, "Oh, he's done." A teen filming whispered to his friend, "This is going viral tonight." Bolton's mouth opened but no words came out. His hand shook so violently the badge rattled in his grip. Danielle continued, calm and clinical. "You destroyed my property. You escalated without probable cause. You cuffed a federal agent. And you made racial assumptions in front of witnesses and cameras." Bolton finally stammered, I didn't know. Danielle leaned forward. That's the problem. You never asked. He fumbled with the handcuffs, nearly dropping the key. His hands trembled so badly he took twice as long unlocking them as he did snapping them on. The metal finally clicked open. Danielle rubbed her wrists, the marks red and visible. Bolton managed. Look, maybe we can just talk about. Danielle shut him down with one sentence. This conversation isn't between you and me anymore. Because now there were witnesses. There was video. And a federal badge. Bolton was already falling. Officer Bolton stood frozen, badge still trembling between his fingers, the truth settling into his bones like ice. One wrong decision was bad. But this wasn't one decision. It was a chain of arrogance, assumptions, and unchecked power finally snapping. Danielle flexed her wrists, the red marks glowing like evidence. She didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She simply documented, her phone raised now beside her own badge. Bolton's brain scrambled for something, anything, to grab onto. Protocol, justification, a miracle, none came. I thought. You thought wrong, Danielle interrupted sharply. Her voice sliced clean, leaving no space for excuse or sympathy. Bolton staggered back half a step as if the words hit him physically. The neighborhood watched in electric silence. A mother held her child's hand on a porch. A teenager whispered, "This is history." Bolton fumbled for his radio like a drowning man reaching for a lifeline. Dispatch. Possible. Miscommunication. Danielle's eyebrow arched so high it challenged gravity. Oh no, she said calmly. You're not scrambling this away. She leaned closer. Not intimidating, but commanding. State this clearly, for your recording and mine. You pulled over a registered vehicle without probable cause. You detained a federal agent unlawfully. You destroyed property. And you escalated based solely on assumption. The last word landed heavy, because they both knew what it meant. Neighbors murmured. One man clapped slowly, sarcastically. The humiliating sound echoed like a gavel strike. Bolton tried to speak again, but Danielle spoke over him with the precision of someone used to giving orders, not taking them. I will be filing a civil rights complaint, she continued. My agency will be notified tonight. Bolton swallowed hard. Wait. Listen. We don't need to. Danielle actually laughed. A short, humorless exhale. You think I'm walking away? The siren lights painted her face blue, red, blue. Each flash made her seem larger, more inevitable, while Bolton shrank with every second. Then she delivered the blow Bolton wasn't prepared for. You're not the first report on you. His eyes snapped up. What? Danielle nodded. I've seen your name. Multiple times. Complaints. Internal. Murmurs. Pulling over drivers who look wrong. Bolton's breathing grew ragged, fight seeping out of him. Those weren't. I wasn't. Danielle raised a hand. Save it. The truth doesn't care how you spin it. Bolton's shoulders dropped as if gravity finally remembered him. Danielle turned toward her car, scooping up her scattered folders one by one. Every move calm, methodical, unshakable. Bolton watched helplessly. No power left to abuse, no authority left to hide behind. Tonight, the predator became prey. And the world was watching. Bolton stood in the street as Danielle gathered her things, surrounded by spilled oranges and cold sweat. His badge suddenly felt heavier than lead. Around him, whispers spread like wildfire, quiet to loud, shock to delight. That's the FBI. He's done. Bro, this is going straight online. Bolton's radio crackled again, but this time he didn't reach for it. His brain finally registered what he'd triggered, a federal-level disaster. Danielle straightened, the badge clipped neatly back onto her belt. She glanced over her shoulder, locking eyes with him one last time. This stop is over. Bolton instinctively stepped forward, panic spiking. No, wait, a misunderstanding, maybe we can just settle. Danielle turned fully to face him. Officer Bolton, the only misunderstanding tonight is yours. And it ends here. She tapped her phone screen, ending the recording with a crisp beep. But the moment wasn't over, it was only beginning. Without another word, Danielle walked to her car. Bolton stared helplessly as she opened the door and sat behind the wheel, calm as if she'd just left a meeting, not an unlawful arrest. And then, in a twist that cut deeper than anything he expected, she rolled down her window with deliberate slowness. Bolton leaned instinctively, desperate. Danielle's voice came low, precise, and devastating. Internal Affairs will call you. The Bureau will too. I advise you start rehearsing your answers. Bolton's stomach plummeted. That wasn't a threat, it was a sentence. Danielle put the car in gear and pulled away slowly, leaving Bolton in flashing lights and humiliation. The neighborhood watched her go like she was the only real authority in sight. Bolton staggered back toward his cruiser, hands trembling so violently he dropped his keys. He cursed under his breath and snatched them up, slamming himself into the driver's seat. The police radio erupted. Unit Bravo 7, report status. Bolton stared ahead, unable to form words. Bravo 7, confirm. He pressed the mic slowly. Traffic stop concluded. His voice cracked on the last word. He drove away. Not with sirens, not with swagger, just a fading silhouette swallowed by the night. Back in her car, Danielle exhaled slowly, not in relief, but preparation. She knew what came next. Paperwork, statements, hearings, scrutiny. But she wasn't afraid of any of it. This wasn't just a mistake she corrected. This was the exact injustice she'd sworn to expose. Her headlights faded into the dark road ahead. Bolton's ruined career sat behind her like a wreck in the rearview mirror. The real fallout hadn't hit yet, but it would. And neither of them would ever forget this night. Danielle drove straight home, every mile lit by the rhythmic pulse of her own adrenaline. Not fear, focus. Not anger, purpose. The moment she stepped inside her apartment, she didn't even remove her shoes. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number she trusted more than any badge she carried. It rang once, twice. Then a tired, authoritative voice answered. Carter, you don't call after hours unless it's big. Danielle didn't waste a syllable. It's Bolton. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. Tell me everything. She recounted the stop with surgical clarity. Every aggressive command, every unlawful action, every witness, every cell phone recording. Her supervisor, Assistant Special Agent in Charge Elena Graves, absorbed the story in a long stretch of silence broken only by Danielle's breathing. And you confirmed your status? Graves asked. Only after he cuffed me, Danielle replied. Graves cursed softly, the kind of language reserved for disasters and major breakthroughs. This confirms the pattern, Graves said. We've flagged that precinct before, complaints that went nowhere. Now we have evidence. Your video alone is enough to launch a federal inquiry. Danielle leaned against the wall, exhaustion finally pushing through her armor. So what's the next step? Graves was already moving. Danielle could hear files shifting, computer keys clacking. I'm opening an official misconduct report. Internal Affairs will be notified tonight. And as early as morning, the Department of Justice will evaluate this precinct. Danielle closed her eyes. A beat of silence stretched between them, not emptiness, but gravity. You did good, Carter, Graves finally said. You stayed professional, you documented everything, and you walked away with the leverage we needed. Danielle exhaled shakily. Not relief, but validation. For every driver who didn't get to flash a badge, she said softly. For every complaint they ignored. That's exactly why we're doing this, Graves answered. Then her tone sharpened. But stay alert. If the press gets this first, it could get messy fast. Danielle nodded instinctively, even though Graves couldn't see her. I understand. And Carter, Graves added. No contact with Bolton. Everything goes through us now. Danielle cracked the smallest, tired smile. That works for me. They hung up. Danielle finally removed her blazer, set her badge on the table, and stared at it. Tonight wasn't luck. It was a collision of courage, training, and timing. And tomorrow would set history in motion. Across the city, Officer Bolton sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at a silent phone, praying it never rang. He didn't know it yet. But the Bureau was already coming. Officer Bolton didn't sleep. Not a minute, not a second. He sat hunched over in his dim kitchen, badge still clipped to his belt like a ghost that refused to leave. The replay loop tortured him. Danielle's calm voice, the flash of the badge, the eyes watching, the phone's recording. Just before dawn, his radio crackled with normal morning chatter. But Bolton couldn't pretend it was a normal morning. The sun hadn't fully risen when his phone finally rang. He stared at the screen. Unknown number. His throat tightened. He answered anyway. "This is Officer Blake Bolton." A cold, even voice responded. "Officer Bolton, this is Deputy Internal Affairs Director Levine. We need you to report to headquarters at 10 a.m. for a mandatory interview regarding an incident from last night." Bolton felt his heart sink into his stomach. He forced his voice steady. "As this, disciplinary?" Levine didn't soften a syllable. "It is a misconduct investigation involving unlawful detention, destruction of property, and field escalation without cause." Bolton closed his eyes, as if darkness could protect him. "Agent Danielle Carter was involved, correct?" The pause was long enough to feel like judgment. "Yes, and we have already received her preliminary statement, as well as on-scene recordings." Bolton swallowed a curse and forced his voice quiet. "I understand. I'll be there." The call ended, but the line didn't feel dead. It felt like a rope tightening. He leaned back, staring blankly at his uniform. A few days ago, it gave him authority. Tonight, it felt like evidence. Across town, Danielle prepared for her day with robotic precision. Coffee, notes organized, transfer of her video to secure storage. Every motion powered by principle, not emotion. Her phone buzzed, a text from Graves. "IA confirmed. On pace." Danielle nodded to herself. Phase 2 had begun. At 9:45 a.m., Bolton walked into Internal Affairs headquarters. His steps were heavy, as if gravity had doubled overnight. A receptionist showed him into a conference room. One table, 2 chairs, a recorder, a pitcher of water he was too nervous to touch. Minutes later, Levine entered, expression carved from stone. "You understand you're here as a subject, not a witness," he said. Bolton nodded, throat bone dry. "Yes, sir." Levine pressed record. "For the record, Officer Bolton, describe the traffic stop you conducted involving Special Agent Danielle Carter." Bolton opened his mouth to speak. But the truth, the lies, the fear, all collided at once, clogging his throat. The interrogation had begun, and no badge on earth could save him now. Bolton sat rigid in his chair, every muscle tense enough to snap. Internal Affairs Director Levine stared across the table, expression flat and impartial, the way a guillotine blade doesn't care who stands beneath it. "Start from the beginning," Levine instructed. Bolton tried to inhale. It came out as a shudder. "I observed a vehicle I believed to be suspicious," he began. Levine didn't blink. "What probable cause did you have?" Bolton hesitated. "Too long. I thought it matched a stolen vehicle report." Levine interlocked his fingers. "Dispatch records show no such match." "Did you confirm the plate before escalation?" Bolton's silence answered for him. Levine scribbled once, the pen scratching like a verdict. "So you pulled over a random driver?" Bolton flinched. "I acted in good faith." Levine stopped him cold. "No faith. Just facts." Bolton's voice cracked. "She wasn't complying properly." Levine raised an eyebrow. "She complied verbally. She asked why she was being stopped. That is her right." Bolton swallowed. "She moved slow, looked nervous, acted like she was hiding something." Levine leaned forward slowly. "Or she was a black woman being pulled over by an aggressive officer in the dark with no justification, correct?" Bolton's jaw clenched. He wanted to argue. He wanted to deny. But every defense he imagined sounded worse than silence. Levine pushed harder. "At what point did you determine she was a federal agent?" Bolton exhaled shakily. When I saw the badge. And you continued detaining her until then." A statement, not a question. Bolton nodded weakly. Levine reached into a folder and pulled out printed screenshots, footage captured from neighbors' cell phones. Bolton saw himself on paper, yanking the car door open, groceries exploding across the pavement, slapping cuffs on her without hesitation. A stranger to himself, Levine tapped the photos. Property damage, unlawful restraint, escalation without cause. Bolton's defenses shattered. He sagged in his chair. "I messed up." Levine corrected him coldly. "You profiled a civilian. You violated federal protocol. And you unknowingly handcuffed an FBI agent. That's not messing up. That's misconduct." Bolton stared down at the table, wishing it would swallow him. Levine's voice lost any remaining softness. "Effective now. You are placed on administrative leave pending full investigation. Your badge and service weapon will be collected. You are not to engage in field work or public contact." Then came the final blow. And Officer Bolton, this is very likely to become a federal civil rights case. Bolton pressed his palms to his forehead. Everything, the badge, the authority, the swagger, gone in the space of one traffic stop. Levine clicked off the recorder. This interview is concluded. Bolton stood and walked out, a shell of the man who strutted onto that street. His fall was officially on record. By the time Bolton exited Internal Affairs, the sun was fully out, but it didn't feel warm. He walked across the parking lot like a man heading toward a gallows, not daylight. His badge and weapon, once symbols of power, were sealed in a labeled envelope he wasn't allowed to touch again. Inside the precinct, news spread faster than any officer bulletin ever could. Bolton's pulled, suspended without pay, no badge, no gun. Man's finished. Some whispered with smug relief, he'd made enemies. Others whispered with fear, if Bolton could fall, anyone could. Lieutenant Harris, the man who once looked the other way, called an emergency meeting. Officers filed in stiff-backed, unsure which way the wind was turning. This department has been flagged, Harris announced bluntly. Effective immediately, all stops will require explicit documentation and body cam verification. No exceptions. A murmur rippled through the room. Harris continued, voice heavy. We are officially under federal review. No one dared respond. Meanwhile, across town, Danielle Carter stood before a very different audience. She met with her supervisor, Graves, and a pair of attorneys from the Civil Rights Division. Public interest is already rising, Graves said, sliding her a tablet showing viral posts. Danielle glimpsed video thumbnails, blurry footage, captions exploding with outrage. Cop detaining FBI agent. Racial profiling exposed. Bad stop backfires. Millions of views and climbing. Danielle exhaled slowly. Visibility could be a blessing, or a storm. Graves noted her concern. Remember, we didn't choose publicity. But we won't run from it. The attorney added, this isn't about one officer anymore. His behavior reflects a pattern. If we uncover systemic bias, we move on the entire precinct. Danielle nodded. That's what she wanted. Not vengeance, but change. Back at Bolton's house, his phone buzzed relentlessly. Friends, reporters, text alerts screaming headlines. One message from a fellow officer. You were reckless, man. Now look. Bolton stared at the words, hollow. For the first time, he wasn't angry at the criticism. He was crushed by the truth behind it. The man who once strutted through neighborhoods with swagger now sat powerless in his own kitchen, surrounded by silence. Internal Affairs had struck the first match. The Bureau was pouring fuel. Public outrage was the wind. And the flames were only getting higher. As evening fell, Danielle stood on her balcony, city lights blinking below. She thought of every name in old complaint files. Every black driver who didn't have a badge to flash. Every story that ended quietly instead of loudly. Tonight, hers wasn't quiet. And tomorrow, the real reckoning would begin. By morning, the city wasn't whispering about the incident anymore, it was shouting. News vans lined the sidewalk outside the precinct. Journalists crowded the entrance like storm tides pressing against a seawall. Misconduct investigation underway. Police stop involving FBI agent goes viral. Federal review confirmed. Reporters shouted questions at every cop entering the building. Did you know him? How often has this happened? Is profiling common here? No one answered. They couldn't. And some didn't want to lie anymore. Inside, tension thickened the air. Officers avoided eye contact, worked slower, triple-checked minor reports, afraid the smallest mistake might make tomorrow's headline. Lieutenant Harris stood in his office staring at his reflection, regret stamped deep. The reality settled in. Years of ignoring the warning signs led them here. 1. Officer's arrogance blew open a door Harris spent years pretending was locked. Down the hall, the conference room pulsed with federal presence. Civil rights attorneys, internal affairs investigators, data analysts with laptops and subpoenas. They tore through records like surgeons cutting infection from wounded flesh. Complaint files, dashcam logs, bodycam footage, ride-along audits. The deeper they dug, the darker it got. Danielle arrived. Not undercover, not quiet, but confidently, badge displayed. And for once, officers stepped aside instead of stepping forward. Graves greeted her with a nod. "We've confirmed multiple stops matching the profile," she said. "Bolton wasn't the only one. But he's the one who gave us daylight," Danielle replied. "Then let's use every second of it." Graves handed her a dossier so thick it looked like a textbook. "This is what the real battle looks like." Meanwhile, Bolton sat in his darkened living room, blinds closed against the cameras camped outside. He flipped through channels, every news station showing his face. One anchor said, "Viewers, this footage is disturbing but important." Then the video played, Bolton ripping the door open. Groceries exploding, handcuffs gleaming under police lights. Danielle silently enduring until she chose her moment. Bolton's stomach turned. For the first time, he didn't see an officer doing his job. He saw a bully abusing power he never deserved. His phone buzzed again, this time, a number he recognized. "The precinct," he answered slowly. "Bolton," Harris said curtly. "Federal auditors want a full debrief from every officer who worked your shifts. They have your stop history. And it doesn't look good." Bolton swallowed hard. "What do I do?" Silence. Then Harris said, "You face it." Bolton shut his eyes. There was no escape left, only consequences. Across town, Danielle Carter closed her case file slowly and whispered. One department down, more to go. The city was awake now. And it would never look at traffic stops the same way again. The precinct that once operated like a fortress now felt like a crime scene. Every hallway echoed with tension. Every desk felt like a witness stand. A row of unmarked black SUVs arrived just after sunrise, forming a silent procession along the curb. Agents stepped out. FBI, DOJ, civil rights, stone-faced, clipboard-carrying forces of accountability. They didn't knock. They walked in like they belonged there. Because now, they did. Officer desks sat empty. Many cops out, sick, others hiding behind paperwork, hoping invisibility might protect them. But nothing could. Lieutenant Harris stood stiff-backed as the lead DOJ investigator approached. "Lieutenant Harris," she said, "we formally begin our audit today. We need access to all traffic stop data for the past 12 months. Harris nodded, jaw tense. Understood. He escorted them to the records room, where metal cabinets clattered open. Dashcam logs, field notes, call reports, complaint files ignored, unanswered, or buried. A mountain of evidence waiting to be read properly for the first time. Meanwhile, Danielle arrived, not undercover, not cautious, but in full daylight. Every officer she passed avoided her eyes. Not because they disliked her, but because they respected her. Or feared her. Either worked. Graves met her at the foyer. "We've identified patterns," she said. 10 repeat officers. Scores of questionable stops. No discipline on record. Danielle clenched her fist around her badge clip. "This is systemic." Graves nodded. "And now we have proof." Back at Internal Affairs, Bolton sat in a smaller room across from a new interviewer. This one wasn't asking what happened. He was asking why. "Why did you stop her?" Bolton stared at the table. "I thought the vehicle." The agent cut him off. "You never checked. Why did you cuff her?" "She was being. She asked for your probable cause." Bolton's voice broke. "I don't know," which was the only honest answer he'd given. The investigator leaned back. "Do you understand that your actions were not only illegal, but dangerous? You escalated a stop based on appearance, not evidence." Bolton nodded slowly, shame settling into his bones. "Yes, I see that now, but seeing it wouldn't undo it." Outside that sterile room, Danielle walked past the processing office. She glimpsed Bolton through the window, smaller than she remembered. Not a predator, just a man broken under the weight of his own decisions. She felt no pity, but she did feel clarity. One officer could be disciplined. One city could be awakened. But the fight was bigger, against a system that allowed this to happen again and again. Bolton wasn't the end, he was the opening. And today, the real trial had finally begun. Within a week, the investigation expanded beyond anything the precinct expected, and far beyond anything Bolton could have imagined. The DOJ team pieced together stop reports like puzzle fragments, forming a picture both ugly and undeniable. Patterns emerged. Names repeated, neighborhoods targeted, excuses copied and pasted across files like a script. 13 officers flagged, 7 confirmed problem cases. 3 suspended before lunch. What began with one unlawful stop became a sweeping purge. Inside the precinct, fear gave way to something new, reflection. Officers who once treated complaints as inconvenience suddenly realized how deeply they mattered. Policies long ignored were dusted off and enforced. Bodycams stayed recording without accidental shut-offs. And community groups, once brushed to the sidelines, were now seated across conference tables, invited to shape reforms. Harris, humbled by reality, opened a town hall in the precinct itself. Citizens filled the room, some angry, some hopeful, none silent. One mother tearfully described her teenage son, frisked for walking home at dusk. A college student recounted a stop that ended with handcuffs, and no explanation. Every voice raised the same truth Danielle had lived through. Unequal treatment wasn't theory, it was lived experience. Harris stood up and said words no one expected. We failed. We ignored. We must rebuild trust, and that starts today. For once, people believed him. Meanwhile, Bolton received a letter, thick, official, stamped with federal insignia. He tore it open with trembling hands. Notice of disciplinary referral and federal civil rights review. Possible charges pending. He sank into a chair, not angry anymore, not defensive, just gutted. For the first time since the stop, he let himself think beyond himself. Beyond shame, beyond consequence. He thought about Danielle, about the power he abused, about the people who couldn't defend themselves like she could, about every moment he dismissed with a smirk or shrug. A realization hit him with brutal clarity. He hadn't just ruined his career, he'd been living as proof that the system needed cleansing. Across town, Danielle stood outside City Hall beside Graves as reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. Agent Carter, one asked breathlessly, what do you feel about sparking a departmental overhaul? Danielle paused before answering. Her tone wasn't triumphant, it was determined. This isn't about me, it's about every person who deserved fairness and got fear. If one badge stopped it once, then maybe 100 badges can stop it for good. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. That night, she sat on her balcony overlooking the city. Lights flickered, sirens echoed faintly, but not menacingly. She knew, the fight wasn't finished, but today, it moved. And tomorrow, it would move further. A department didn't change because it wanted to, but because someone forced it to face itself. And Danielle Carter had become that force. 6 months later, the city didn't look different. But it felt different. Patrol cars still rolled through streets. Sirens still wailed when needed. But stops took minutes instead of seconds, and justification came before action, not after uproar. Officers didn't swagger anymore. They documented. They checked their assumptions. They treated people like citizens, not suspects. The precinct that once turned a blind eye now displayed new posters. Professionalism is non-negotiable. Accountability saves lives. BODYCAM must stay on. A training room converted into a classroom where officers, veterans and rookies alike, learned de-escalation, racial dynamics, and civil rights law from real experts. For some, it was a revelation. For others, a reckoning. Lieutenant Harris, once reluctant to face the truth, became its loudest enforcer, a man who learned too late, but learned deeply. We can't undo the past, he told his team, but we can refuse to repeat it. Meanwhile, Bolton found himself in unfamiliar territory, outside the badge he once wore like armor. Charges hadn't been announced, yet, but his name was tarnished, his career history shredded. And for the first time, Bolton didn't fight it. He volunteered at a community center, not as redemption, but as education. Kids asked him the question he avoided for years. Why do you treat people like they were guilty? Bolton answered honestly, because I stopped seeing them as people. And that's the worst mistake a cop can make. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He worked for humility. But the true center of gravity was Danielle. Her video, the one recorded on a quiet neighborhood street where groceries spilled and assumptions shattered, became training footage in law enforcement seminars nationwide. Agents showed recruits the moment she lifted her badge, not to flex authority, but to illustrate restraint, courage, and professionalism. Danielle herself moved forward in her work, not as the woman who stopped a racist cop, but as the agent who jump-started policy change citywide. Standing at her apartment balcony one evening, she looked over the lights and thought of every unseen traffic stop happening below, every driver praying for fairness, every officer deciding who to be in that moment. A familiar vibration buzzed her phone. A text from Graves. Review passed. System reforms approved statewide. Danielle smiled. Not big, but real. One case. One moment. One badge raised at the right time. It hadn't toppled the entire mountain. But it carved a path. A path other officers, advocates, and citizens could widen. Justice wasn't a victory lap. It was a march. And thanks to one bad stop gone right, the march had begun.